Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about the U.S. halting student visas and other things. It is Friday, May 30, 2025. And so the U.S. is now halting all student visa appointments because they want to pass new rules requiring them to vet them by using social media to decide if they are terrorist sympathizers, which means criticizing Israel or supporting Palestine. But it may well include criticizing Trump too. So all student visas are canceled, and I just read are paused the appointments. And I just read another article that said that now they want to cancel Chinese student visas. And people are still trying to figure out exactly what that means. They've been talking for days about how they're going to do that, but they haven't written up the formal order yet. Now, when they do write the formal order, it remains to be seen if it will clarify anything out, because, for example, the Trump administration um, is exemplifying government efficiency by using AI to write their stuff. So it's garbage. The MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, coming from RFK Jr., had a report which was made by
Maha.
AI, and it's all full of fake citations that don't exist. And in fact, it has citations to URLs that have a special code word in the URL, which is inserted by ChatGPT to mark ChatGPT generated content. So this is incredibly obvious. The U.S. government is leading the way in doing what sort of uh, pointy-haired middle managers think. Oh, let's just fire the staff and replace them with AI. Everything will be fine. And if all you do is like glance at the first page of something to decide if it's right, then it looks okay. But if somebody actually reads it, like in court, they find out, wait, this is garbage. So
Well, you
this
need
is
to
why
have,
people often tell me, even though we are currently ruled by Nazis, they're different than the first Nazis because the first Nazis were actually kind of efficient about things like paperwork.
yeah, that is true.
And they
That is
actually
true.
believed in science, although they believed in a lot of magic and stuff too. But anyway, so we have dumbed down Nazism.
Well, Sam, you get like RFK Jr. to create, right? What was it again?
Make
Uh,
America healthy again. Maha.
Maha. I need a Maha hat.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maha.
the other new acronym to learn is TACO. You know that one?
No.
That's referring to Trump has changed the tariff laws 50 times so far in his first 4 months. And
Yeah.
so that stands for Trump always chickens out, which I wish Wall Street would learn because there's a whole bunch of excellent examples showing that when he makes these tariffs, puts them up, puts them down, he informs his insiders how to bet on the stock market because that just pushes the stock market up and down in a very predictable way. And he's done it 50 times. And each time there's like a meeting in the Oval Office where a few people get in and suddenly they like buy short positions or long positions to match this. So it's just complete corruption, just pumping money out of the market into the pocket of him and his cronies.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
But
To be fair, Nancy Pelosi did the same thing on a smaller scale. She used her
yeah.
insider knowledge to invest, but Trump has, yeah, that's the thing about Trump. I mean, Biden, arguably, his son got like $200,000 in Ukraine he shouldn't have got by his connections. But the Trump family has made $1 billion a month so far. They made like $3 or $4 billion in grift just in his first 4 months. Um, so you who say the Republicans are just 1,000 times more efficient at corruption than the Democrats.
Yeah, well,
They said he was a good businessman. That was why you wanted to
yeah,
put him in. He
yeah,
knows how to
yeah.
steal money like on the scale of Putin instead of just being a wimp and stealing money on the scale of like Spiro Agnew. So,
So, Sam, this will lead into a story I'll share with you.
yeah.
You've heard of shortwave radio?
Yeah, but I'm real vague on how it differs from other radio. Must be a different wavelength, I guess.
So, yeah, it's a different wavelength. And there's the AM. Everybody's familiar with AM, FM, and you have TV, obviously,
I bet the younger generation doesn't know what AM and FM are any more than they probably know what a pencil or handwriting is
or an analog clock
or a floppy disk.
or a floppy disk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, shortwave radio, I don't know when it became popular, but it was there's the AM dial that goes up to 16 something kilohertz, six
16,000. kilohertz, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, 16,000
Yeah.
kilohertz.
Yeah.
And if you go beyond that, you get into the shortwave radio band. And what's unique about shortwave and AM to a certain degree is it bounces off the ionosphere.
Right.
So we use that after World War II for propaganda reasons. And we drop leaflets over different communist countries telling them how to build a shortwave radio so they could tune in. And it was Radio Free Europe, was sponsored by our government
And I
agency.
suppose Voice of America, which the Trump administration has now shut down.
So Voice of America is different.
Oh, okay.
Um, wait, oh no, it was Radio Free America.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know about, yeah, Voice of America, you're probably right, was one of those. But let me give you a little background. So that came about around the 1980s. The Cold War was not quite coming to an end, but the popularity in shortwave radio kind of had changed. And originally was all propaganda. You can't sell advertising on it because somebody in Russia isn't going to buy your get,
Coca-Cola or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
Actually,
and then
McDonald's was in Russia until recently. In principle, they could advertise there, but I think because it was like official government use, right? It was not for commercial.
no, it wasn't official government use.
Oh,
And the FCC in the US, even though they kind of monitored it, you had to get a license, people didn't get it.
oh,
And a lot of people went out and they could buy a transmitter fairly inexpensively. And they were doing pirate shortwave radio. So in the 80s, it started going to Christian broadcasting and Catholic radio, and they were beaming, signals around the world. And you could get on the air for maybe $25 an hour, which is very inexpensive. But there was no real revenue stream per se.
yeah.
Then it started moving into the alt-right and real extremes. And what I recently learned is that Trump was listening to shortwave radio during the traffic, on January 6th, because they were giving play-by-play action, as I
Oh,
understand it, of
oh.
how it was going.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he was watching it on Fox News.
Well, Fox News, but you could get more commentary on shortwave.
Yeah, it
So
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, so right now, as I understand it, the biggest shortwave station, and so shortwave has kind of gone more towards it's kind of faded away. The FCC hasn't really paid that much attention to it. It's gone to the far right. There was an Egyptian, I'll say, billionaire who decided to go with shortwave, and I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was for Christian radio. And he spent around $8 million to have the biggest shortwave antenna built in Maine, of all places. And there's a big broadcasting 50,000 watt, multiple 50,000 watt transmitters in Maine where they have this giant directional antenna that they can rotate to beam into certain parts of the world.
Hmm.
Now, recently, you'll see where this is going. Recently, what's the value of shortwave? And the answer is there's not much. We don't have to do propaganda to foreign countries. Maybe we could use it in China, but we got the internet.
It's going to depend on space weather too, right? If it bounces
Yeah,
on a state.
right. Yeah, and the quality of the signal isn't that great.
Yeah.
And then just before COVID, some agency or somebody made an application to the FCC. And what they wanted, you'll see where this is going in a minute, is they wanted an experimental license. And if you tuned into the frequency, all you would hear is bzz, 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 and that was it. And people are saying, what is it? Until late last year, Wall Street, turns out, was behind this. And those bzz, bzz, bzz are stock trades. They're micro trades. Why did they go to shortwave radio? And about 12 years, 15 years ago,
Well, minimum
Wall,
possible latency, right? The speed of light.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So there's the transcontinental cable from the US to UK,
Yeah.
and the Wall Street laid their own cable at a cost of $500 million
Yeah.
to save, I think it was 10 milliseconds,
Which is
right?
enough to make you a lot of money.
Which is enough to make you a lot of money, but it's still slow. So if you go with shortwave radio, you've got the distance
Yeah.
and you've got the speed,
Yeah.
and you don't have to pay for anything,
That makes,
meaning other
yeah.
than a license. Yeah. So there's a debate right now. Should there be private ownership of the public airwaves, which is what this really comes down to, right?
Yeah.
And if you go with AM and FM, you have to apply for a license. But shortwave is a little bit different because it's not that well monitored or enforced by the FCC. But at the same time, you still have the pirates that are out
Yeah.
there that just broadcast all kinds of garbage.
It reminds me of Bitcoin, where you have a financial incentive to just get the best technology available, and whoever
Right.
has the best technology wins.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, long story, but that's where we are, shortwave radio.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it looks like it's going to be used by Wall Street, and there's a debate going on over it right now.
No, it makes sense. Yeah. So,
What else you got?
well, the plans. There's a thing called BEAD, Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, which is a U.S.
Okay.
government program to bring broadband to rural areas. And they were in the process of laying fiber, but they have canceled that. And they're going to move it to Starlink, which will be more expensive, less reliable, and slower. But it's obviously because this is what Doge did all through the government, is just funnel more money into Elon's pocket. So,
Interesting. You
and
know,
yeah,
yeah, I was listening to this about 6 months ago. Kentucky, I believe it's Kentucky, Tennessee, one of those states, rural states.
yeah,
They had the budget to provide broadband to every home, and the cost for some of these homes was going to range around 50 to 50, $100,000 to put up phone poles just to go to one house.
yep. That's right. Probably. So you could make the argument that Starlink is better. What it is a
Yeah.
way of spending less government money and forcing the homeowner to spend more money, which would certainly be in the red straight tradition.
Uh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
and and so
Hmm.
and also Elon Musk they're trying to make a big AI deal in the Middle East. They're going to make a deal they're going to build a data center project for OpenAI, but Musk contacted them and said, Trump will not approve this deal unless you include Grok AI too. So, they're just using their government power to basically influence, deals to shovel more money to them. And the last one, which is kind of amazing, is if you have hair loss, the treatments for hair loss are apparently not very good. And of course, we're ending all medical research in America. So they formed a hair DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. So a Discord community of amateurs is testing and developing new hair growth drugs. And it serves to somewhat like the Dallas Buyers Club, where they're importing drugs that are banned in America to resell here, and also trying experimental treatments of various kinds, um, including fairly dangerous ones. And some of them are claiming amazing results. So, this is the extension of do your own research. Not do your own research, do your own drug development. Distribute your own handmade drugs to people. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Well, the answer is thalidomide. Do you
Yep.
remember thalidomide babies?
Oh yeah. But that
So,
was the official pharmacy. That was official doctors handing that stuff out.
yeah, so thalidomide babies were babies that were born with stub limbs.
Right.
And so their hands would be at their shoulders, fingers at their shoulders and shortened
Yeah.
limbs. And it was prescribed to women to reduce morning
Postpartum.
sickness.
Yeah. Something given to pregnant women. I think this is why they're now very, very careful about whether it's okay to take certain drugs when you're pregnant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that led into this.
Yeah.
But it was illegal in the US, but it was fairly
Oh,
widespread in Europe.
I thought
And
it was prescribed in the US, but I didn't know. Yeah.
it was not prescribed. Who blocked it in the US?
I don't know.
Government agency.
Like the FDA, I suppose.
Yes, the FDA. There was a woman there that was running the FDA and said the research isn't here. I'm not going to allow it. And so, how did thalidomide babies get born in the US? People were mailing the drugs.
Yeah.
And so, women here were taking it. And although we didn't have as widespread numbers or great numbers like Europe did, there were quite a few in the US.
Yeah.
So that drug has now been banned, obviously.
Yeah.
But in recent years, they found it's turned out to be a cure for a fairly rare disease, and they're starting to prescribe it again in
Yeah.
very rare circumstances.
Yeah. I
And
read
from what
about that. It's good for
yeah,
something. They just make sure you're
yeah,
not pregnant first.
yeah. And I think each pill is serialized, and when you're given a prescription, you have to account for every pill.
Well, you know, the number one drug that has this consequence is alcohol. I mean, so anyway,
Well, in large doses, would
well,
we?
yeah, but I mean, fetal alcohol syndrome, I'm sure that affects a whole lot more babies.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think
yeah,
also meth
yeah.
and heroin have serious consequences if you do them while you're pregnant.
That I don't
I'm
know.
not completely sure, but I think so. Anyway,
Yeah,
so now I can get down to information security, which is slightly different than politics, although not that much. CISA, virtually all the top officials at the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency have quit or are going to quit soon. So they're basically decapitated. And I was talking about this on Pulse Security podcast. I said this may greatly impair our cybersecurity, but they pointed out, you know, in a lot of government agencies, firing the boss makes things work better. So, well, you could say that, but I imagine all the staff all down the agency is being cut too. I think just like every government agency, tons of people are
yeah,
being fired. And the other thing is, just like Trump's tariffs, which he has changed 50 times, they're constantly having more layoffs, changing the rules, bringing people back, firing your boss. And when people ask their boss, like, should I keep working on the project? Should I even show up for work? Nobody even knows. So the whole thing is basically paralyzed until they would like stop changing everything all the time, which doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon because they're using an old AI that doesn't even work to make all these decisions. It came out, the AI they're using is Llama 2, which is like 2 years old. They don't even use the best AI. They use the crappiest old AI, so it's even more full of mistakes than the modern AI, which is still
yeah,
pretty unreliable.
yeah,
And so,
yeah,
and there's been a prediction. You know, people, everybody's betting like hundreds of billions of dollars to develop AI, assuming we're going to make a lot of money because it's really going to revolutionize this. But the Nobel laureate Daron Acemoglu, in economics, I think, Nobel laureate, estimated that AI will boost productivity at approximately 1% of GDP in the next decade. That's not those huge boosts that we were betting on, that everybody's betting on. Like Microsoft and everybody is acting like this is going to be the necker killer app is going to come out and everyone's going to cheerfully pay $100 a month for it next year. I don't think so.
yeah. I don't think so. But I will tell you, if you've been watching Nvidia, they're the lead horse in this race.
That's all speculative investment. You know, everybody's piling on the hardware and spending like crazy, assuming that some product is forthcoming that will pay for all this.
Yeah, so I've been watching Nvidia stock. It tanked once China announced that they could do something similar,
Deep seek.
DeepSeek, and Nvidia's stock decreased by about one third.
Because China demonstrated you could do it for 1,000 times less, and you didn't need those stinking NVIDIA chips, or at least that's what they claim. A bunch of people said, "Oh no, they're just lying. They have pirate NVIDIA chips."
Yeah, so anyway, Nvidia's stock is back up to where it was before that.
Yeah,
So it's climbed up in the last couple months to it's increased about 30% of its value.
you know, in my AI security talk I did at Layer One, I started DeepSeek running, and I said, This is the reasoning model. So when you ask it a question, like if you're playing Russian roulette and the guy puts in 5 bullets and fires it himself, and then he hands you the gun, the question is, should you just fire it at your head or spin it first? And obviously the answer is spin it first. But no AI can solve this question. And DeepSeek is hilarious. It starts arguing with itself. It goes, well, I could calculate the Bayesian statistics. Oh, maybe that's wrong. Maybe I should do this. Oh, maybe the rules are different. And just babbles back and forth. And I let it go. After 45 minutes, I've never seen it finish before. It just babbles back and forth, never getting through the reasoning part. But it finally finished. And when I went back, it had totally forgotten what the question was, and its answer was like 114. So this is why they're now bragging about the latest reasoning models can actually remember what they're doing for like 7 hours at a time. So you can get it to like write code, and it will spend 7 hours writing the code at a cost on the server of thousands of dollars, and then give you a pretty good answer. So the only reason why AI would possibly save your company any money is that you're not remotely paying enough to pay the cloud-based company their costs yet. It's
Yeah.
all a lost leader.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so there's the automatic license plate readers are all over the place in systems, and a Texas cop searched for a woman who had gotten an abortion, and he searched other states where abortion is legal successfully and found her. And this is, of course, getting privacy advocates worried. Now, in this case, they said she self-administered the abortion and the family were concerned for her safety. That's why they were looking for her, but that sounds like a thin cover story. And remember, Texas still has that bounty law where if you detect somebody around you getting an abortion, you can turn them in and get a $5,000 bounty. So anyway, that's interesting. Those automated license plate readers are apparently, technically, it's possible to search anywhere, search any state. I don't know the legality. I don't think anybody does.
Hmm.
Uh, and this one, I've been hearing various rumors about this ever since years ago when the Russians leaked the NSA's exploits against routers, but now the ASUS routers are being hit with stealthy persistent backdoors. The backdoors can survive reboots and firmware updates
Oh
because
my.
what they do is they use the existing functionality of the router to add another trusted SSH private key.
Okay.
So that persists in the configuration. And that's how you detect it. You have to look in the configuration to see if there's another private key you didn't put there.
So even if you do a factory reset,
Yes, apparently so, because they say
hmm,
firmware update, they say. Now, a factory reset might get rid of it. I'm not sure. I would think it would.
yeah, I would think so too.
Although, most people don't want that. Most people want to replace the firmware but maintain the settings. And if you did a factory reset, then you'd lose your connection to your ISP and everything. So, I wonder.
Well, yeah, but it's not that difficult to reconfigure. Are we talking home routers?
Yeah,
Yeah.
home and
So it's
small
not
business. Well, your home users probably wouldn't know. So
right.
yeah,
Right.
so it's an issue.
Yeah.
It might back up the configuration, reset the software, and then restore the configuration. Some of them do
But
that.
if you store the configuration, would that not also restore the private key, the
Yep.
additional key?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
usually what you would want, right?
Yeah. So what you want is you want your configuration on paper and manually re-enter it.
You're going to enter a private SSH key. It's like 50 hex digits. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't even
Yeah.
have checksums. Yep. So there's another one called
Yeah. Interesting.
BPF door, and this is a hidden backdoor, and it's named that because it uses the Berkeley packet filter, which is part
Okay.
of the Linux kernel, and it sniffs the network for magic packets. And if you use this is how port knocking works. If you sniff for magic packets, you can detect them even if they're blocked at the firewall. BPF can sniff on the other side of the firewall, and it
Okay.
does. So you
Yeah.
listen for magic packets, then you perform rootkit hidden activities. Pretty clever.
Very clever.
Yeah.
BPF is also used by Wireshark, isn't it?
I imagine it is. I don't know. I
Yeah.
probably is. I think it is because I know when you write display filters, They have this nice friendly format like IP.addr, but if you want to write capture filters, you have to write them in BPF syntax, which is totally different.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's used by right a portion of Wireshark, one of
yeah,
the filters. Yeah.
yeah. So I've added to my classes Notebook LM. This is something I didn't know about. Notebook LM is a special AI where you can upload links to web pages or PDFs or any documents like your textbook, and then it will use AI to search just the documents you put up there. And if the answer is not in those documents, it will tell you that. So it doesn't hallucinate and it doesn't guess. It's just basically an AI powered index to read your book. It's intended to be a study aid for students.
Hmm.
And it seems great. I'm going to add it to all my classes. We'll see how it works. I uploaded like a 500-page government PDF about cybersecurity, like one of the NIST documents. And you can now ask the AI to like summarize this, tell me what to do here. And I asked it how to protect a home network. And it said, this document is for government networks and it doesn't tell you how to protect a home network, which I was really glad to see. It knows when it doesn't know.
Hmm.
Because it doesn't
Yeah,
go hunting on
that's
the whole internet for whatever stupidity it can find out there. It just looks in these official documents and tells you if it's in there, which is much more valuable for students.
yeah.
So I think it's probably something every student should have. It's free too.
So yeah. So Sam, have you heard of the big beautiful bill?
Oh yeah,
So among the tax cuts, Medicaid cuts, you know what else is in there?
a lot of things. I know Trump is given the right to ignore court orders.
And about AI specifically is
Oh,
where
I
I'm
thought they
going.
said they canceled all the AI regulations that Biden put in, but they were pretty wimpy anyway.
Yeah, they were wimpy, but there's a provision that would bar states from passing laws to regulate artificial intelligence for a decade.
Yeah, I think they also try to ban California having our own vehicle emission standards that are different than
Yeah,
others.
yeah, that was something else. I didn't know that that's part of the big, beautiful bill.
I'm not sure if it is, but I think it is.
Yeah, you could be correct. Anyway,
Yeah.
interesting. Then, since we're on AI, you see that Meta is reshuffling their AI division again.
I did not know.
So they reorged and they're in the process of reorging. And since we're talking about kind of employment or reorgs where people might get laid off, do you know about the block list?
No.
So a number of tech companies have what's called a block list or a non-rehire.
Oh, the blacklist of people not to hire. Oh,
Yeah, well,
I
meaning
think
previous,
that's probably illegal, but I know they've always had it.
is it illegal?
Well, I don't know, but I guess what if you're on it? Can you sue and get taken off it? I mean, I
Well,
know.
how do you know you're on it?
Well, that's why I bet you could sue, and I bet some part of this is illegal. As long as I know, it's been sort of a semi-underground thing all my life. Yeah.
Yeah, so companies have used this, but this is becoming more widespread that if you're a lower performer, then you can get put on the non-rehire list. And some of these are permanent blocks, others might be 2 year, 4 year.
I bet this is illegal because remember, like 10 years ago, all the tech companies had a secret deal where they would only pay a certain amount and they fixed the prices, and that was illegal. And this
Yeah.
seems very similar. And this reminds me of like Harvey Weinstein telling an actress, you have to have sex with me or you'll never work in any movie again because I'll put you on the list and all the other movie studios will know not to hire you. This is the kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure this is illegal, but I'm not sure exactly what law it breaks.
Yeah, I don't think it is illegal.
Well, it'd take a good lawyer to figure out. It seems
Yeah,
like
I
some
mean
kind of conspiracy of companies, and the fact that you can't find out if you're on the list or get taken off the list seems like that's got to be illegal. There's got to be some process for you to complain. Otherwise, you could like put somebody on there just to punish them. Anyway,
well, so far I have not heard of any lawsuits.
yeah.
But there are a lot of people in the tech industry that are familiar with this.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
it is interesting.
Yeah. It'd
So
be nice if the list would leak. That would be interesting information. And you'd
yeah.
think it would. Somebody's going to leak it.
Well, it would have to be somebody in HR.
Probably somebody gets put on a list and gets mad or something. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I got another one here. Did you
Yeah.
hear about Texas governor has signed a law requiring age verification for Apple and Google App Store purchases?
Wow. I did not
Yeah.
know that. I'm surprised because I think the app stores don't have anything controversial in them like porn or anything. So why would you bother? Anyway.
So it requires parental consent for app downloads and in-app purchases by minors.
Well, the in-app purchases I can see, but just downloading free apps, well, I wonder. I guess they could download a VPN app or, and thus they're circumvent a porn block or something. I guess that might be what they're worried about.
Yeah, and I believe Utah already has such a law.
That you have to prove your age to download from the app store.
Yeah, an age verification.
Well, I guess I can see it in that parents would like to control what you do on your device, but I know Microsoft used to have, and I think browsers used to have a way parents can turn on something called parental controls
Right.
device, and then just like corporate management, then they could block you from downloading stuff. It doesn't seem like you really need a law making it true for everybody in the state, as long as there's some feature you can turn on for the parents who want to do this. But anyway,
Yeah, so I just quickly looked this up. Utah has enacted SB 142. It's the App Store Accountability Act,
yeah,
ASAA.
yeah. Well, I can
So,
see how some parents, like especially religious parents, might want to have this degree of control over their device, but I'm not sure you need the government forcing every device to have this rule.
yeah, so what's the age verification method?
That's another huge problem now that you mention it.
Right.
That's why it would
So,
be better if it was just your parents turning it on, because then they would control whether to turn it off and they would know your age.
yeah, so, this protects children, right? Protects children from pornography and
Well,
human
as you
becoming.
point out, it probably doesn't because the children probably know how to cheat on the age verification, and it probably blocks a bunch of other people who don't know how to cheat on the age verification.
So it probably blocks seniors, but not teenagers.
That's usually, yeah, like child safe caps. Remember, my dad used to have pliers to open them, and just everything was sitting around with the cap off because old people, it's too hard to open those damn caps.
Yeah. What else you got for us? I'm out.
All right. So
This
the
is a good
states,
way to end the week, huh?
yeah, well, lots of crazy stuff happening. So the
Well
U.S. is
said.
going to ban foreign officials if they come from countries that support content media censorship. And what this is actually something I should have seen coming. America has basically no internet regulations, but Europe has it. And
Right.
they passed the DSA recently, and the DSA is like the Digital Services Act or something like that. This one's actually pretty extreme. This forced Apple to let you download things from alternative stores and things like that. So
Right.
that basically creates these laws in America without it passing through the American government. So this is the response. They're going to block visas for officials that come from countries that support content moderation censorship, like from Europe for the DSA. So this is how they're striking back with visas to try to punish foreign countries for passing rules that end up affecting content moderation in the U.S.
So is this for government officials or for any visitor, or
Right now,
does it
foreign
say?
officials.
Okay.
So it's sort of like emptying the embassy, saying your officials are persona non grata. It's a way of us to express displeasure. How dare you censor the internet?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Which,
Yeah. Yeah.
it makes a little bit of sense. You could see it as an invasion of American sovereignty. If Europe passes a law against something, why should that limit our citizens when we didn't pass a law like that? But of course, it doesn't officially limit American citizens, but it does in the marketplace because once Apple, well, actually, right now, Apple's going to sell different phones in Europe that have
Right.
this alternative store. So unless every company does that, makes a different phone for Europe and America, different, then it's certainly a lot of these rules are going to percolate to America. And I think they did. They passed a privacy law in Europe, and that did have similar effects in America, although it was not passed here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's an interesting issue.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. It's
Yeah.
getting more interesting every day.
Yep. And here's another one, which is, I forget what device is affected. Let me find out. Okay, this is the browser use module. in software development, um, which, but I'm trying to understand which store it is. I think GitHub. Um, Sorry, I'm confused. Set allowed domains. There is something called the browser use model, but what I can't find out is what software would do this. Um, Let me try. Oh, here it's AI. Okay. So if you have an AI project, you can use this browser use model that comes from GitHub, and it turns out to have a serious flaw. It has an allow list, so only certain domains are trusted, but they just parsed it sloppily. So if you put a allowed domain in, followed by a colon, so it appears to be a username colon password before the URL, it takes that as the allowed domain. So you can take a forbidden domain and trivially turn it into an allowed domain and slip things through. So there are 1,500 AI projects, including these AI agents that are all the rage now, that use this library and are vulnerable to this bypass of the allow list. So
I see.
that's what tends to happen. And this is something I've been bringing up a lot. Supply chain issues. Every developer uses Python or Node or something, and they download these libraries like NPM, and those libraries often have supply chain poisoning in them. How do you really know they're clean?
Right,
Unless you want
right.
to write everything
Yeah.
yourself, which I saw a company at KakalakiCon say, we never use any open source, we write everything ourselves, which you can do, but that's a pretty expensive solution.
Right. Yeah.
There's a great website called ransomware.live, which shows you the consequences of real ransomware attacks and ransomware groups. You can see everybody's been ransomwared and has public disclosure, and you can see all the groups, and you can even see the specific negotiations, including the chat logs of how much they asked for, how all the negotiation went, and how much they finally settled for people that paid. So it's a treasure trove of information for ransomware. And this is
So
something I know
so
at least,
rants.
yeah, I know at least
Sorry.
two people that are
Yeah.
in the business of negotiating ransomware payouts. This is a big part of incident response these days.
So ransomware.live.
Yeah, yeah,
Looking for it. I'm not finding it.
yeah,
Maybe
that's
I
it.
got it.
Ransomware.live is the URL. And if you go to the top left and click, you can see the victims and you can see the negotiations. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, I see. I got it
Yeah,
incorrect.
yeah,
There we go. Ransomware.live. I have to
yeah,
pull
yeah.
this
You
up.
can see groups.
Worldwide map,
Yeah, you can see
groups,
groups.
victims this year. This year we got 3,515.
I see 20,000 victims. This year, 3,000, right?
Yeah.
This month, 500. Yeah.
So,
And you can see them one by one down there, and you can see exactly how much they paid and how it was negotiated and everything. So this is enormously useful because one of the services I know that ransomware negotiators do is they know the reputation of your ransomware group and therefore whether to bother paying them or not. Because there's some where you pay them and you get the stuff. There's others where you pay them and you don't get your key back.
and this is worldwide or US only?
I think it's worldwide, but I'm
Yeah,
not.
I think, yeah, I'm seeing German
Yeah,
flag. Oh, I see. Their flags Canadian, US.
yeah.
There's German. What is that? Spain? Yeah,
The fun
Spain.
site. Here's another one I just learned about. Let me get the URL. It is gamma.app. This is a free AI. Yeah, it starts for free. I think pay after that. That will take a chat prompt and it will make a PowerPoint show out of it for you. Make a presentation, document, website, social media post. It makes a finished document so you can make it helps you turn things into PowerPoint effortlessly.
So run that by me again. What does
You
it
put
do?
in some information like a prompt and it makes a PowerPoint show out of it. Just
And
like,
that would,
yeah, just
where would you use this?
to make a presentation for work or something, you can say, summarize, here's my emails, 4 emails about this project, make a PowerPoint explaining the current status.
Oh, I see. I see.
Here's the chapter of the textbook, summarize this information. You could totally write a lecture for a college course. Here's the chapter of the textbook, make a PowerPoint.
Yeah, got it.
And you're
Got it.
probably going to
Okay.
get one as good as those ones that come with the textbook publishers, which tend to be obviously made by some underpaid junior professor who sort of threw together something.
Yeah, and then you get a design engineer who doesn't understand. and decides to modify it, change the words.
Yeah, yeah. This my that's a advisory consulting job you and I worked on together for a while, where they'd have a bunch
Yeah,
of non-technical design engineers following up everything. When I wrote my
yeah.
thesis in grad school, there were we worked on cryogenically cooled proteins where we hit them with lasers and watched the chemical reactions slow down at low temperature. And the research paper first drafts were typed by a secretary, and she would randomly interchange the words phonon, photon, protein, and proton. She didn't know these were different words. So the result was garbled beyond belief. You had to catch all these things, which is sort of like what AI can do for you now. It can write a garbled mess out of
Yeah.
information, probably making egregious mistakes.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like I said, AI is like you have a junior assistant, like a high school intern, that has some energy but doesn't really understand what's going on.
Right. Right.
So
Right. Right.
you can get some value out of them, but you have to watch like a hawk whatever they produce.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So Volkswagen's app is full of the usual crap. Some guy got a Volkswagen, but it had been previously owned. So when he tried to connect with the app, it said, "Oh no, the previous owner email is where the pin is going. You can't log in without getting that pin." She said, "Oh, do I have to track down the previous owner? It's a 4-digit pin. I'll just try a few." He tried a few and it didn't lock him out. He said, "Oh," so he wrote a Python script to try all 10,000 pins, got in because there's no rate limiting or anything. Then he said, "Boy, this thing is crap. I wonder what else is wrong." And turns out there's unprotected API endpoints exposing passwords and other confidential data. So, this is the unprotected API is the new, open Amazon bucket, which is the new SQL injection. Like 8 years ago, SQL injection was the number one vulnerability in the world that had most of the stolen data. But then that got eclipsed by open Amazon buckets, which were even more data lost faster and easier. And now it's open API endpoints. So, there's people always find another door to leave open.
So, Sam, was it an EV that the guy had?
I don't know. I imagine it might be true of all modern VWs. It's the phone app and the server behind it. So I'd imagine it would apply to all Volkswagens, but I don't know.
Well, wait, any idea why you would need a PIN?
Well, every car seems to have an app now, so you can remotely control like the radio and stuff. I don't, my
Oh,
car
I
is a little
see.
old for any of this, but
Yeah.
modern cars always have computers built in and the internet built in, and you're controlling something through an app, maybe unlocking it through the app or something. I've read a lot of these blogs about modern phone apps you use to control your car. You got a modern cars. Your cars come with an app to control some part of the car.
Yeah, but there's no PIN that's required. Or maybe it's for the initial setup.
Maybe something like that. Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Well, they ought to have two-factor authentication, so requiring
Right.
again, it's not a bad idea. But I think,
Yeah, but to
yeah.
but to use a PIN, a 4-digit PIN?
Well, yeah. Well, that's
Well,
yeah,
here, I'll tell you, people who bought a year and a half ago who were buying the Volkswagen Golf EVs, the electric vehicles,
yeah.
absolutely hated it. The car was great, but the app was total garbage. And I think 70% of the people who bought a Volkswagen said I'd return it because the app is crap.
Well, that's a little extreme, but apparently the app is really crap in security as well, which is what I would expect. I mean, a car manufacturer isn't really a specialist in this. They probably outsourced to the cheapest contractor and didn't review the work. This is usually how the first generation of anything is.
Yeah, it's car guys trying to do programming, right?
Yeah. Well,
Or project management of programming.
and they don't even
Yeah,
understand that they should do a security audit or anything. They probably just say, well, get an app. It looks good. Okay.
cheaper, cheaper. We need it for less money. Get it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. They probably
Yeah,
test it for functionality,
right.
work, and then they think they're done, which
Yeah,
is not
yeah,
unreasonable. That's what you do with like the muffler or the brakes or something. If it works, it works.
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
security thing you're talking about.
That's beside the point.
Yeah.
So Volkswagen got so desperate, I'll use those words, those are my words, that I think they gave $8 billion to Rivian for their software.
I know they had a huge emissions scandal.
That's completely different.
Yeah.
Meaning for their EV software,
I,
electric vehicle
boy,
software.
boy, that seems pretty desperate to buy from your competitor.
Yeah. Yes.
That's like admitting you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, here's one where you might have opinions. Some guy wrote a post. He asked a serious question. He said, should I put on another third-party antivirus on my Windows machine, or is Microsoft Defender good enough? And what the guy gave was a well-researched, lengthy response pointing out how many of those antivirus companies have been caught lying and then collecting your data with like adding extra root certificates to your machine to break into SSL connections and selling your data. And he said, you can't trust antivirus companies. You should just stick with Windows Defender. So what do you think?
I think that's been the story for about 15 years.
Well,
And not based on that reason
yeah.
or rationale. It's that Defender is good enough. Microsoft finally has a product that's good enough. You definitely do not want to run two or more antivirus software because then they start competing with each other and you run into other issues.
Yeah, and I think if you put another one on, it'll automatically turn Defender off.
It'll turn Defender off,
Yeah.
but let's say you put in McAfee and
And
give me
Norton.
somebody else
Right.
and Norton.
Symantec,
Yeah.
are they all the same
Or
these days?
I
AVG,
don't know. Yeah.
AVG is different. Yeah. So you
Yes.
could, now I've heard and back in the days of Vista, that would actually freeze your computer. What I hear is now it is less harmful, but probably still not good because
You,
each one
you,
of them slows you down by a lot.
right. Right. And if we look, the attack of viruses against computers is not that great.
Well,
The risk,
I know, and these days I hear a lot of people just using living off land techniques, like using Berkeley packet filter. There's plenty of software you can use to do your attack that is not malware.
right?
And that's how you typically avoid this. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
and
mean
it's
malware
Sam,
is extinct though, but still.
right. Yeah, yeah, it's still out there. But Sam, as you pointed out, what was it? Probably 20 years ago, using Python, you could write software script that avoids antivirus detection.
You still can. A news article came by last week. Somebody did the same thing again. You write Python scripts that just load the malware as a data item, then change the permission and execute it. It still fools antivirus. And that technique was in textbooks like 15 years ago. That's where I found it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
it's the same problem keep coming around. See, I got
So
yeah,
just kind of follow up on this a little bit.
yeah,
There are antivirus signatures that need to be updated,
yeah.
and it depends on when in the update cycle the virus is detected versus your signature is updated, which I get. But sometimes Microsoft is ahead, sometimes the third parties are ahead. And you can't look at it at a moment in time. You have to look at the bigger picture. And Microsoft, for the most part, I think has been in the top three, is being, good enough. I'm not going to say the best. There is no best. I guess that's what we should say.
This is like one of the frequently asked questions. What's the best antivirus to use? And I never have any clue. But one thing about Defender is it probably won't
Yeah.
slow down or break Windows as much as the others.
Right, right,
So
right,
that's
right.
something. Yeah.
And it's less of a vulnerability because it's not an additional tax. It is not an additional attack surface.
Yep, that's probably fair. Anyway, I'm
Yeah,
interested to hear this.
yeah,
I haven't used a Windows machine as anything other than a Target in like 10 years, so I have no actual experience trying to live on Windows. Boy, I'm
yeah.
glad I quit trying to live on Windows. Windows is very, very annoying.
That's good enough. So,
Yeah.
Sam, you're using a Mac, you use
Yeah.
Linux. Do you use antivirus on Mac or Linux?
No,
Not at all.
not at all. Actually, I do have something on one of my Macs, but it wasn't even up to date. I just worried a little bit about ransomware. But all I did was I checked, and my web page is getting automatic backups. That's what I
Okay.
made sure there's backups to my web page. That's as far as I went to actually protect myself from ransomware. Because that would be
So,
bad. If it nukes my web page and my local copy of it, I would have a bad day.
so do you have like five different versions of your web page backed up?
No, well, I forget. I checked and some kind of automatic. I think it keeps automatic backups every day for a week or something like that. I found out my web hosting provider does that. I
So
checked
if
into it
you
like a year ago, and it was something pretty reassuring.
So if you get ransomware, you obviously you might not be able to go to the previous version.
Yeah, I might have to go back by a day or two. That wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would just
yeah.
lose like the last day or two of work, but if I was to lose everything, that would be awful. I couldn't really reconstruct a lot of it.
Right. But what I'm getting at is if you go on vacation, you don't take a look,
Oh, yeah.
you'd want like a 2 week window or
That would be
some,
good now that you mention it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I probably should write a script to back it up every month or something.
Yeah, or twice a month. I mean,
That would
right.
be good. That would be a good plan. Yeah, maybe I should.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. Okay.
so I got a couple more of these. Um, so somebody built a AI-based tool that will figure out where people leaving YouTube comments are. It will scrape YouTube. It will find all the places that person commented, aggregate together all their comments, and try to deduce where they live. And they say it'll build a profile of you, guessing where you live, what languages you speak, and what your politics might be. So the privacy people are worried about this. Now, I wonder how accurately it can place you, but I imagine if you leave a lot of content, you'll probably eventually mention like a store near you or something. And
So, Sam, I will tell you, this came up 20 years ago.
I remember it came up when one of the search engines published supposedly anonymized data was AOL.
Right.
And then they found out that, in fact, you can pretty easily locate people from their search engine because people will search like stores near them or medical conditions they have and things like that.
So there was a TED talk that was given, and I think the title of it, this was probably 20 years ago,
Yeah.
was if you click, I think the title was something like what happens when you click I like curly fries.
Ah.
And so they were able to deduce eventually what area within a pretty close geographical, like within a city, where you would live if you lived in a city.
Well, they did have your IP address, right? So that gets you pretty close.
Well, I don't think they based it on that. I think they based it all in your profile and your searches, not IP address.
Well, yeah, I guess that's an issue. You have a name and you probably have a profile. In fact, probably just looking at the profile will tell us what city you're in or something.
Well,
Looking, and if you were to go look at like LinkedIn for a similar username, you could probably find your resume and stuff. This is how you track down people, how Brian Cook
yeah,
does. I mean, if you look for somebody online, it's usually extremely easy because they used the same username 10 years ago on a game account or something.
or forgot about it and it's
Yeah.
still out there. So
Yeah.
this is all big data, right? This
Yeah.
is taking little bits of data, but taking lots of data and then extracting and figuring out what matches come up.
And I have like 6 students in contact with me now who are being stalked and having their lives ruined. Because once your privacy is compromised on the internet, they can't get
That's
away
it.
from people hunting for
Yeah.
them. They find them everywhere they go and harass them and hack their devices again and stuff. This is the problem with the lack of privacy. Um, Once people decide they hate you, there's no getting away from them on the internet.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, here's one that might affect you. If you use OneDrive to upload files to ChatGPT or Zoom, you get hosed because Microsoft's OneDrive file picker, which requests access to your OneDrive to share a file,
Yes.
is overly broad. It looks to the end user like you're only selecting one file, but the actual share has full read and sometimes write access to everything in your OneDrive. So you send a link saying I shared a file, but that link actually goes in through an API that has full permission to read everything. So you're exposing the documents you didn't mean to share. So that's interesting. And I wonder if Microsoft's going to fix it because, the other one I talked about where RDP uses your old password, Microsoft is still just ignoring that and saying, this is fine. This is intended behavior. It's perfectly fine that when you change your password, the old password still works. I said, how can that be fine? And how could
Yeah.
this be fine? I shared one file, so it shared everything. This reminds me of people that used to share their whole C drive on BitTorrent. It was a pretty common mistake. In fact, that's how Air Force Two leaked. Obama's
It
helicopter
is?
lines. Yeah, I think the the contractor took a copy of the Air Force Two plans home, and he had shared his entire C drive on BitTorrent to get like movies and stuff.
No.
Apparently, the BitTorrent had a similar confusing interface where when you configure it, you have to say, "Where's the drive?" and say, "Oh, just choose the whole C drive. That'll work." And it does work. Now
It
everybody can
does.
download your whole C drive anywhere in the world. And the last one I mentioned, which is in case
Uh,
anybody had any doubts about this, Hope, I mentioned last week, Hope is really worried because half the attendees can't come because they're overseas and they're afraid to come into America. And now a something called the InCyber Forum, which looks like one of these executive management kind of a cyber accounts, has canceled their American conference. They're only going to have ones in Canada and Europe because they say people do not want to come due to the challenging U.S. policy climate. So, this is what Trump wants. He wants no Chinese um, immigrants, and nobody from Central America. Basically, no foreigners of any kind are welcome here. Even tourists visiting from like Canada and the UK are going to get arrested and locked up in dungeons. So he basically wants, you know, like the Cultural Revolution, only people of one ethnicity, everybody else kicked out. And that's what we're getting. We're turning into North Korea or Maoist China.
yeah.
Hurry. It just reminds me a
Right.
whole lot of Brexit. You take your whole nation, you say, oh, we don't need anybody. You're going to find out, wait a minute, we really do need partnerships and trade partners and visiting scholars. All that was actually benefiting us. Immigrants
Yes.
to do the work.
Yes.
Gee, it's not true that we can just kick out everybody that isn't white and everything will be just fine.
Yeah.
We're actually part of the world. And the world is an interconnected entity that works when we're all getting along. Trump doesn't know this. Anyway,
All
um,
right, Sam. I think I've had enough for a Friday. How
yeah, me
about you?
too. Yep, that's it. All right. So we'll have another one of these on Tuesday.
We'll join you on Tuesday. Sounds good.